Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Everything You Need to Know. Now this episode is about a game that slipped completely under my radar, and I'm pretty glad it's coming out, well, today, so I can grab it on payday. But what most people don't know about this series is that it is very complicated and very out there. So rather than going back and playing, close to 80 hours of 999, 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors, and Virtue's Last Reward, although I highly recommend doing so, I'm here to save you the time and the trouble before Zero Time Dilemma comes out. What's up everybody, I am Jake, and here's everything you need to know about Zero Escape. So we're going to kick off with 999. Now 999 takes place inside of what appears to be the Gigantic, the sister ship to the Titanic. You play as a college student named Junpei, and the rest of the cast is made up of June, aka Akane, who's an old friend of Junpei's, Lotus, a woman who's really only wanting to help herself, Seven, a big tank of a dude, Santa, who's literally a punk, Ace is an older gentleman with a wise demeanour, Snake is a man who looks rather royal, Clover is a girl who likes to have a lot of mood swings, and the ninth man is a very shifty dude. I hope I'm saying Junpei correctly. Junpei? I'll say Junpei. So the story begins with Junpei being abducted, and after being knocked unconscious, winds up waking up in a cruise liner's cabin, and he's got a strange watch-like bracelet on his wrist. The bracelet only displays one number, the number 5. Now as for the room he's locked in, this is where the main mechanic of the game comes into play. Junpei must escape the room, and the room is one big puzzle. Once out of the room, Junpei meets 8 other people. That's when we are introduced to Zero. Zero is the one who brought all 9 of these individuals into this place. Zero announces over a loudspeaker that all 9 of these people are participants in the nonary game. Zero goes on to explain the rules and tells them that they are all carrying small explosives in their stomach that will detonate if they attempt to bypass any of the digital root door locks. Holy crap. Now is a good time to mention that every single window or door in the interior and exterior of the cruise liner is locked. If anyone tries to tamper with them, boom, they're dead. Simple as that. Also, you may be wondering what the nonary game actually is. Well, quite simply, all they have to try and do is get to the 9th door before the end of the 9th hour of the ship, or it will sink. Simple, I guess. Now, despite what Zero said about the locks and death, the 9th man decides to go through one of the doors anyway and, surprise, ends up dead. Everyone now knows that this game is no joke. The group take on code names, obviously I doubt anyone would really be called Santa or Seven, as they fear even more harm may come to them if their true identities are revealed. Everyone splits into 2 groups to go and explore the ship, following the rules to try and stay alive. At this point, you, the player, must select which group you wish to travel with. This actually affects the story. If you really want to experience the endings of 999, it's available on DS, not 3DS, regular DS for dirt cheap right now. So yeah, there's a ton of endings. There's a ton of them. So if you want to experience them all, well, grab it. It's not that expensive anymore. A few choices that you make lead to Junpei's death. However, some provide answers to questions that need answering. For instance, Junpei learns that another nonary game had previously taken place, and the characters of this game have connections to it. As well as those connections, which we'll get to a little bit later, some of the endings reveal studies about morphic resonance, which is really complicated. I'll leave a link in the description for that, but they also reveal stories about an Egyptian priestess named Alice who was frozen in Ice 9, which is basically something that freezes you to death instantly. Again, there's a link for that in the description for you. I'm not going into enough detail on them 2 things. In one of the more important endings, Junpei discovers that a former participant of the first nonary game was Zero, and he himself set up the second game as a means for revenge towards Ace, the old man who is currently in the game with Junpei. The characters who have survived up to this point confront Ace about this new information, and he confesses that he manipulated the 9th man to violate the rules and walk through the door, which resulted in his death. But why did he do that? Well, it was to gain access to his bracelet and cover his own identity. In the same ending, the remaining characters discover the 9th door. Junpei's friend Akane ends up becoming very weak, and Santa watches over her to ensure his safety while the others go through the 9th door. This door leads to an incinerator. From here, Ace grabs hold of Lotus and holds her at gunpoint. With the incinerator about to activate, Snake tackles Ace, which means that Lotus and Seven have to pull Junpei out of it because he got knocked in as well. Unfortunately, they don't manage to grab hold of Snake though, as the incinerator goes off and it takes the lives of both Snake and Ace. Now this is where the game starts to get incredibly convoluted and you realise that you sort of exist in multiple realities. Bear with me on this one, I'll explain everything in due time. It's really complicated though. So after all of the commotion involving the incinerator, Junpei returns to find Akane on the verge of death. Zero comes over the loudspeaker and announces who the loser of the game is. Himself. Junpei attempts to investigate what this means in a nearby room, but upon his return, discovers that both Akane and Santa have disappeared. He's then knocked out by a gas grenade. But why is this all important though? Well, only by experiencing this ending can you experience the true ending. In the true ending, Junpei learns the truth about the first nonary game. It was set up by a company called Cradle Pharmaceutical. This company kidnapped 9 pairs of siblings, and each pair was separated. One set of 9 went onto the Gigantic, which was in the ocean, and the other 9 went to a mock-up build of the Gigantic in a place called Building Q in the Arizona desert. But why was this the case? What possible reason could they have had for doing something so evil? Well, it was to explore morphic fields. Research predicted that the overall stress of being without their siblings and the stress of the game would activate the field between siblings. This would allow solutions solved by one sibling in one game to be sent to another in the other game via these fields. This research was all set up by the CEO of Cradle Pharmaceutical in an attempt to cure his prosopagnosia. The CEO of Cradle was Ace. It's always Ace! Prosopagnosia is also called face blindness. It's a cognitive disorder of face perception. The ability to recognize familiar faces, which includes your own, is impaired. It's a really weird disorder because all of your other visual processing remains intact. This is where those connections that Junpei discovered come into play. The first nonary game went a bit squiffy. A brother and a sister weren't separated onto the 2 ships. Those siblings were Akane and Santa. Seven then comes into play as he was the one who discovered the kidnappings and rescued the children. Ace managed to snatch Akane before she could escape and made her go into the incinerator room where she was forced to solve a Sudoku puzzle, which she couldn't solve, and apparently died. After getting through the 9th door and into the incinerator room, Akane is gone and Santa escapes with Ace as his hostage. The others, including Junpei, are trapped inside. This is when it's revealed that the game is taking place from the point of view of Akane during the first nonary game. Akane managed to connect to Junpei through morphic fields during the second nonary game, and she was able to witness many possible futures and pass the information on to Junpei to help him survive. Yet, this is where the convoluted crap comes into it. Junpei is then given the same Sudoku puzzle that Akane was faced with in the first game. Junpei has the ability to replay the solution of the puzzle back to Akane in the past, which means she's able to escape with Seven and the other children, saving her life. At this point, this is where everything starts to fall finally into place. Akane was the victim of the first game. Zero was a participant of the first game. Junpei realizes that Akane was Zero and she had help from her brother Santa. They had recreated the game and its events in the exact same way she had experienced them in order to ensure her survival. As Junpei and everyone escapes, they discover that they had been in Building Q the whole time, instead of the Gigantic, and Akane and Santa are now nowhere to be seen. They fled the scene, leaving only a car behind with Ace tied up in the boot or trunk. The game concludes with an epilogue in which the survivors drive off in hopes of catching up with Akane and Santa. A little ways down the road though, they pick up a hitchhiker and Junpei recognizes them as Alice, the Ice 9 priestess. Confused? So was I. And that's only game 1. Now let's move on to Zero Escape Virtue's Last Reward. Now, much like 999, Virtue's Last Reward has 9 main characters who have been kidnapped by an unknown person known simply as Zero. You control a man named Sigma, and the rest of the cast is made up of Phi, a bit of an I'll take no shit type of girl, Dio, the rude jackass of the game, Temuji, an old guy who I hope I'm pronouncing the name of correctly, Quark, who is a little kid, Luna, a quiet, kind and naive woman, Clover, a bit of a weird girl who's prone to mood swings. She's also the same girl who was in 999. Alice, a very powerful woman, Ice 9, and Kay, a man who wears a full body suit of armour that is irremovable and doesn't really know who he is. Well, we're off to the convoluted bit already, aren't we? In this game, Zero takes on the name of Zero the Third, or Zero Jr., and is an artificial intelligence rather than a real person, and his avatar is a CGI rabbit. What's great about this game is that every character is completely voiced in Japanese and English, so you can choose which one you want. Also, for the rest of this, I'm going to call him 03 because that's how I've been calling him for ages. The year is 2028. Sigma is kidnapped and awakens to find himself in an elevator with a young woman named Phi. 03 appears on a little monitor in the elevator and tells the pair that they are taking part in the nonary game, and their first task is to escape the elevator before it falls, killing them. Phi and Sigma manage to get out and discover that they are inside of what looks like a big warehouse. That's when they meet the other 7 participants. 03 informs everyone that they all need 9 bracelet points in order to escape wherever they are. Everyone is wearing a watch-like bracelet, just like the last game, and points can only be earned by taking part in the Ambidex game. So from here, the game starts to spread into many different timelines, which looks a bit crazy at first. The best bit is that you can experience all the timelines in any order that you want, and on top of that, if you choose a wrong line, it will give you a "to be continued" message. Why? Well, that's because you don't know enough yet. You need to jump into another timeline to gain more information, and then you can return to the other timeline and finish it. With me so far? While doing the first set of puzzles, everyone finds out about something called Radical 6, a virus that, when it infects people, slows down the cognition of the infected and drives them into committing suicide. On top of this, the pasts of all of the characters are looked into. For instance, Luna isn't actually a person. She's a humanoid robot whose job is to make sure the nonary game stays on track. Alice and Clover are secret agents with the DOD, and they have the job of attempting to stop a religious cult called Free the Soul. Temuji wanted to join the game with his adopted son Quark, as they were promised the chance of finding someone. And Dio, well, Dio is a member of Free the Soul and murdered the old woman, taking her place in the nonary game as a means of planting the nuclear bombs. Lovely guy. However, in the timeline that leads on to the ultimate ending, the bombs are all defused by Sigma and Dio is incapacitated, meaning he isn't a problem for anyone anymore. So now everyone else goes off to do the puzzles that they need to complete. Sigma, Temuji and Phi complete their room and they discover a holographic message. The message is from the old woman, the same old woman Temuji had been looking for. Her name? Akane Kurashiki, the same Akane that masterminded the second nonary game in 999. Akane and Zero Senior developed something called the AB Project, which was created for Sigma and Phi. They were being trained to transport their consciousness through time. They are successfully able to do this soon after and are able to stop Dio before he can murder Akane. He then goes on to explain that the elevated danger levels of the game were important and necessary as it would speed up both of their brains and enable them to transport their consciousnesses through time. Also, everyone was infected with Radical 6 as a way to amplify it too. Panic mode plus panic mode equals jumping through time, apparently. The whole game was designed so that Phi and Sigma could experience multiple timelines and retain any information from each line, hence the whole "to be continued" message from earlier. Phi and Sigma then return their consciousnesses to the present day, where they find out that everyone else has been able to cooperate enough to acquire enough points to escape the facility. Everyone leaves and they find themselves in a desert landscape on the moon. Yeah, even weirder, the year isn't 2028, it's 2074, and most of mankind has been wiped out thanks to Radical 6 after Free the Soul unleashed it upon the world from a mission test site on Mars in 2028. Obviously they can't go anywhere, so they go back into the facility, and on the way back in, they find a cold sleep pod. A pod that puts someone into such a low temperature that it preserves them. The temperatures are about minus 196 degrees centigrade or minus 320.8 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cold. Kei then tells the group that he grew up inside of the very facility that they were in with Zero Senior and Akane, and that each person was brought in with the purpose of trying to recreate the events that Zero Senior and Akane had gone through. Clover, Alice and Phi were kidnapped in 2028 and placed into a cold sleep until the nonary game could begin. The pod then starts to open and inside is a clone of Sigma. Kei then reveals themselves to be Akane. Now, one thing can change here. If Dio successfully murdered Akane in that current timeline, Sigma's clone would have been in Kei's armor, which is a quantum superposition. Again, there's a link in the description for what the hell that is. A few of the people are still looking a bit clueless though. They're looking at the clone wondering who this person is and why they're in the pod. Sigma, clearly thinking everyone's just being stupid, tells them to look, saying that they're the same person. Everyone again is puzzled. That's when he looks at his reflection for the first time since the beginning of the game, and is shocked at what he sees. Akane then begins to explain to Sigma exactly what is going on. After he was abducted in 2028, they sent his consciousness to the year 2074, and he was inhabiting the body of his older self. But the reflection, Sigma had seen it before, in a hologram in an office. The hologram was talking about why they made the nonary game. Sigma is Zero Senior. It was his destiny to jump back to the year 2029 and start the creation of the AB project. Sigma created the clone of himself as a spare just in case his body was damaged, and the clone was named Kyle. The primary goal of the AB project was to send Phi and Sigma's consciousness to the year 2074 and then send it back to 2028 with all future knowledge, enabling them to prevent the pandemic of Radical 6, which Dio could not allow to happen. Akane then attacks Phi and Sigma, and the trauma sends their consciousnesses back to the year 2029, and Sigma goes on to spend the next 45 years creating the AB project, and Phi is left in cold sleep. The two finally reach 2074 again, only to jump back to 2028 again and infiltrate the Mars mission test site, the site that launched the Radical 6 outbreak. Also, at some point between Christmas Day and New Year's Eve 2028, Sigma lost both of his arms and his right eye and ended up having them replaced with bionic replacements. Yeah, that was a bit of a scary reveal, especially with the music. Weirdly, and there's very little explanation for it, there's an ending called Another Time End. At this point you're playing as someone called Question Mark. Question Mark took the body of Kyle, but Question Mark doesn't know who he is. When speaking with Akane, she calls him an uncontrolled variable within the AB project, and that he is free to move through time and space as he pleases. Akane then goes on to say that Question Mark is about to go back into the past and save the world, and that Phi and Sigma would need his help, and that this will be the only way that Question Mark could get the answers he seeks for what happened during the last week of 2028. This implies two things. One is that the Mars missing test site simulation would take place during that week, and that Question Mark is actually you, the player, the one tapping the screen, taking all of this in. Honestly, I implore you to play both of these games. Anything I do in this video just wouldn't do it justice. But for now, that's all for this episode, and that's everything that you needed to know about Zero Escape. Zero Time Dilemma releases on Nintendo 3DS and PlayStation Vita in Europe and North America today on June 28th, and in Japan it releases on June 30th, and it also gets a worldwide release on Windows on June 30th as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and if you did, drop a like on it, comment, and subscribe for more. I'll be back again next Tuesday with another gaming related video, and I'll also see you again tomorrow with a new creepypasta. Thanks very much guys, and enjoy your days. Thanks, and oh god, I really need to find a closing line. Do sweet. Me knees, me knees. Yeah, this is what happens when I actually stand in front of the camera. I'm too tall. I'm pretty sure any kind of psychiatrist would probably call most YouTubers completely insane, thanks to the fact that we just talk to nobody in front of a camera. And we continue to keep talking even though we know the video's done.